Hello everyone, welcome to one of a series of interviews from the Festival of the Sound in Parry Sound, Ontario. My name's Keith Horner and I'm helping celebrate 30 years of music making, of fine music making, at the Festival of the Sound. Today the sun's trying to shine out there, succeeding from moment to moment. There's not much of a breeze, relatively calm outside by the looks of it, just a bit of a swell. But inside the Stocky Centre, we have three fine musicians who have a knack for making waves. Now, the medium of the piano trio, violin, cello, piano, hasn't traditionally been associated with making waves and innovation. But the Gryphon Trio, to my ears, have spent the past decade and a half not only doing surprising, innovative things, but they've done this while honing and polishing the traditional repertory of the past, the great repertory of the piano trio. And achieving a balance between the two is not always easy. So violinist Annalee Patipatanakoon, cellist Roman Borys, and pianist Jamie Parker, welcome back to the Festival of the Sound. It's great to have the Gryphon Trio here again.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be back.
Do you remember when you first came to the Festival of the Sound?
Well, you'd think that'd be an obvious question that we would have been prepared to answer. I'll tell you one thing. I remember wanting to come to play at the Festival of Sound for many years. It took a while. I mean, we were young, and right away we wanted to play everywhere, including here. And we knew about Jim and the festival, and I remember the first festivals. I think we probably played Brahms B major or something like that, and it was very hot. And I mean, you'll continue describing the enviment, I'm sure.
It was very hot. That's right.
I mean, I remember growing up in Vancouver and hearing all of you guys in CBC, when it was Arts National, and saying, we're here live at Festival Hall in Parry Sound. And so we come here and then we go, but this is the hot, sweaty, stinky high school gym. Well, I guess that's what it is. But I mean, there was always such a great atmosphere, as evidenced by this crowd, So you always you always treated it like a wonderful opportunity to share music. So
is that the most prominent thing you remember from those? The temperature, basically.
I remember that. I do remember one time. I think I was playing with Martin Beaver. This was a long time ago, and it was I'll demonstrate. So we're playing some Mozart or something, and then you hear this. You hear this like massive train.
The train
blowing right by you, and so I do remember we having to stop the odd performance, and then again for CBC, if they were taping for broadcast, there would be requests. Could we redo that opening movement just because to get the train whistle out?
The F minor train whistle, and then we started leaving it in, and then Gary Kalesher actually incorporated it into a piece that he wrote for the festival. Well, now we have different acoustics, let's say, with the wonderful Stocky Centre. Can we talk a little bit about acoustics and what the difference really is let's start from a string point of view. I mean, what difference does fine acoustics make when you're playing?
And then you go over to St. Petersburg, for instance, where we played in this old Glinka hall, and it's just sort of a European shoebox. That was a really, really sort of prominent kind of experience for us because I had a brand new cello that I was playing at that time. It was just a new acquisition, and it was brand new. It was very nice. I liked it. But when I played that cello on that stage, it felt like a Strad. It felt like I had just infinite control. Any of the cello's weird spots were just I didn't need to worry about them. They were still there, but there were so many other interesting things that I could do. And that's what goes on in the Stocky Centre here. I mean, that's the same thing. You have to figure out how, what it is that the hall wants to do. You have to figure out that you don't really have to overplay. Actually, that's a tough one, because if you're enthusiastic, you want to just keep filling the place with more and more sound. But you don't have to do that. You can work.
So you feel that individually, Annalee, do you feel the energy from the other players the same way?
as not only just the other players, but what I was going to comment, I agree with everything Roman's just said, but the other great thing is that we can actually feel the audience, we can hear the audience as well. And I think that for us is equally important. We can see you, we can hear you, so we feel like we have this rapport.
We can tell what
candy wrappers.
and we can recognize what kind of phone you have, just by the length and timbre of the ring. That doesn't happen here, thankfully.
Jamie, is it easier to play the piano in the sense that you don't have to work as hard, or are there dangers in that?
Well, I think it's wonderful to have a great acoustic, and plus you feel welcomed into somebody's really deluxe cottage when you walk in here, with all the natural wood and the rock and the stone, and it has a very natural feel. Just like when you look outside at the shores of Georgian Bay, it's really it has a great feel to it. So that's a great place to start, and then it's got great sound. There's a great piano, so what's not to love? It all feels good.
Is there a specific character to this festival, the Festival of the Sound, that you don't capture elsewhere, other festivals that you're going to and have traveled to?
Well, this sort of goes back to your first question, sort of BC, before the concert hall days. And I was going to add that the one thing I remember most was that, really we didn't know this part of town at all. We came as far as St. James Church, and we basically spent all of our time over there, right? And so Dairy Queen was our restaurant, and I think we stayed at the time, it was either the Best Western, I can't remember.
It was a motel, a couple motels up there.
But it was the motel, it's the Town and Country, and I miss actually staying there because we had so many great opportunities to meet people that were also staying there. Everybody would just sort of hang outside their rooms. There would be these chairs, and people have their drinks or their snacks, or and we don't.
Or their drinks.
But in most places, we don't have that time or that luxury of that interaction. It's usually after a concert at a reception, or we plan to go out and eat after. But you don't. These chance happenings are rare, and that's what's so great about this place.
Yeah, being a small town, and Parry Sound's a town of just over 5,000 people, plus more in the summer, of course, but it's a relatively small town, and I guess there are less distractions, you're more focused on the festival, and less temptation just to pop down to the nearest town for the evening, because the nearest town is a couple of hours at least away. When you're touring, who drives the van?
Take turns.
Not me.
There you go. Jamie and I share. Yeah.
Actually, Jamie made a really cute analogy in a chamber music seminar that we were just at, and I forget why you brought this up.
Oh, it was in the development of the 4AC minor piano quartet, and there's this really sort of lovely, quiet, dreamy melody that gets passed around, and as it got passed around, it kept getting slower. And so I was telling him, you have to at some point have somebody to be tempo cop and sort of bring things back. And it reminded me of when we'll be driving somewhere on the road, and Roman and I will be like blah blah blahing in the front about something, or checking texts or emails or maps or something, and then we'll hear this voice in the back saying, "Green." And then we pull away.
Let's talk about other piano trios and the sort of work that you do. There have been earlier Canadian piano trios, including several with that title, Canadian Piano Trio. The great Winnipeg cellist Sarah Nelsover was in 2 trios with that name. An even earlier trio was the Hamburg Trio, founded as early as 1905, with the 3 Hamburg brothers and various family members thereafter. These trios and later trios, thinking of trios like Moshe Hammer's 1/3 9th in his Calgary days, Marta Hedes Trio, Trio Victoria, the Brandon Trio, and lots of trios who are around today. They tend to specialize just in the classical repertoire, the Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, few romantics, and a few from more recent times, at least from the last century. But with the Gryphon Trio, with performance at the center and the very driving force of the members' various activities, you have a wider repertoire that reaches much further and covers a much broader base. Can you sort of summarize this in a sort of mission statement, what the Gryphon Trio is about?
Well,
and then we'll go on to talk
I mean, I
about the
think
different areas.
actually, sort of in an interesting way. I mean, it comes back to what must have been floating around in our subconscious when we were choosing names and decided to favor the Gryphon. You know, we didn't want to choose a name that limited us in any way or identified us too closely with any particular style or classical style or period, and chose a Gryphon, which was a mythological creature, combination of lion eagle, which was reputed to have been the guardian of treasures, but which was interesting. So you could say that in a sense, in being interpreters of the great masters' music, the music that's been brought down to us over the generations. In a sense, we're doing that there, but it's all that the Gryphons are also a combination of what is it?
Psychic energy and cosmic force,
and
or
cosmic
something.
force.
Like somebody did a lot more research than we did.
Yeah.
This is getting
well,
close
that
to
was
Harry Potter, isn't it? As well?
There you
Or is
go.
that
You see?
Gryffindor?
Yeah, Harry Potter #7. That'll be a Gryphon Trio soundtrack. But no, I mean, and just so that somehow that being kind of a new and there's a freedom that came with that I think that allowed us to really explore and push the boundaries, look for the boundaries, discover where. I mean, are there boundaries? I mean, whose boundaries are there in terms of what it is that a chamber group such as ours needs to do, what it is that our audiences are interested in our doing? Are there limitations there? Can we take that further? Can we present things that both challenge us, that take us further, but also, cause your ears and brains to resonate in ways that perhaps you weren't expecting? You know, that's always interesting. I mean, and working with contemporary composers is it's never the same twice. You're dealing with individuals that are the products of their environments, and we know how different that can be, and they're all responding to, even if they all have studied, even if 3 composers have studied with Christos Hatsis, not one of them will really write anything that's at all similar, I mean, and that's both an indication of a good teacher as well as it is an indication of the fact that these artists are responding differently to the environment that they're coming from, and that's very, very stimulating.
One of the more cutting-edge things you've done, or where you've really pushed the envelope of the traditional concert, is in the multimedia work that you've done, and you've got the Colour for the End of Time, which you did here a couple of years ago with the Messiaen piece, another one with Chan Kanin, West Coast piece, and the Christos Hatsis, Constantinople, which you've toured internationally. What have you discovered through this about how far you can go with multimedia?
Well, we've discovered that you can go as far as you want as long as it doesn't take 3 or 4 days to set the whole thing up in the theater. So, and that's one of the challenges with Constantinople. It's really quite enormous. And actually, we're in the process. There's still a lot of interest in presenting that piece in various festivals internationally. But one of the things we're trying to revisit is the whole lighting component, which takes a long time to set up. When you're working in multimedia, and you have 3, or in our case, in the case of Constantinople, 5 musicians on stage that we know the audience wants to see, so there has to be some light for those people, but yet you have lots of projections surrounding you, which create an ever-changing landscape. Well, in order for projections to work well, ideally, you'd have no lights on. So you have this challenge, this conflict between the 2 elements, and it's because of that you then need to have lots of very specific lights. Instead of turning one huge light bulb on to light the whole stage, you have to have 100 tiny ones that light little places, and you have to stand exactly there, otherwise your face is half missing. But, so, I mean, that's a very practical thing. The other thing is that the Messiaen Colour for the End of Time project, which we finally, we performed it a number of times this year with Jim in different places around Canada, and it changed every time, and we finally got it to a place in Kelowna, BC, that I think we all felt it was really, it had come to a place that it was really something we were proud of, and that really did the job. And the big thing there is that if you have any sort of visual, it will immediately pull away from the music, and that's the rule for us. The music is the number one our number one cause. And if any other component starts to really overshadow that. I mean, unless we decide that, unless there's a project, one day that we decide is just about, the visual component and we're somehow involved in it. But I mean, if it's something like the Messiaen, you have to, which is just such a sacred work. I mean, to mess around with it in the way we did was bound to be, a walk through a minefield, and it was. Well, we survived, and we learned a great deal, and it's quite beautiful. But so that's the challenge. We're all citizens of a very visual age, and as soon as there's anything anywhere that's moving, our eyes and our brains just go straight to that. And if you can't just hope that people will stick to the music. At the very least, if you don't get it right, people will say, but it was so hard to listen to the music because those visuals were just.
But when they work, they can be truly wonderful and enhance the music. Over the past few years, I've heard some remarkable mini pieces. Now, the Messiaen piece we're talking about is an hour long, but little 2-minute, 3-minute pieces. And these are as a result of your work at the Claude Watson School for the Arts. Jamie, what do kids make of the piano trio, high school?
Well, it's been a lot of fun working. We've worked at this one school for about 10 years now, and we work closely with Alan Turok, a teacher there, and composer, guitarist, and he works with them. It's an advanced music program, so they compose over the course of the year little trios for us. And so we go in a couple of times, we read through sketches and ideas, we throw out some ideas, say, hey, maybe you could flesh out the piano part in this register while the strings are up in this register, and just talk about practical issues of composition, throwing ideas around, and then at the end of, usually in 1 or 2 concerts a year, we play a couple of the student works, and so we have them, come up, take a bow on stage, and it's really been a great project.
But some of these concerts have been recorded on CBC,
Indeed.
So they've had national exposure, and also they've been reviewed. And one of them, I'll never forget, I think it was reviewed by William Littler. Was it?
Yeah, and he made some, just sort of a passing comment about, just sort of waved his hand at it. This David kid did not like this, and he was very articulate, and he wrote a letter to the editor, challenging the reviews. It was published. It was great.
Excellent. Well, I've heard some of those pieces, and they truly are good.
Well,
pieces.
there are times,
stimulating.
There's something to be said about their brevity. So, occasionally we'll start. We will have finished the first half with a big professional commission that had a big scope, and and typically there are parts that people really like and parts that were challenging. Then we come out and play this little 3-minute thing, and everybody just goes.
And it's also been gratifying to see a handful of the students over the years have come on to study with me or with one of my friends at University of Toronto. So it's a good pool of talent there.
Okay. Well, both Annalee and Jamie have got professorships, right, at the University of Toronto, and Roman, you teach there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys get out of teaching? I mean, we've got a glimpse of it with the high school. What's that?
There's a lot of different things you get out of it. I mean, I think there's. I personally enjoy the responsibility of being with these people at a time in their lives where it's important to give them encouragement, good influences, a certain sense of fear about trying to make a living at this. I mean, I tell my students any and every day of the week, look, this music is such a wonderful field to be in, and we spend our days with Beethoven and other people who love Beethoven. I mean, it does not get any better than this, but it is possibly the stupidest career choice you could make in 21st century North America. I mean, really, it's stupid. So I mean, you have to love what you're doing. You have to be in this for the long haul. You have to have will, desire, stamina, all sorts of things to make this work.
Or as Mr. Starker used to say, you've got to have the disease.
Anyway, Annalee, thank you very much. Annalee Patipatanakoon, Roman, Borys, and Jamie Parker from the Gryphon Trio. You can find out more about the Gryphon at gryphontrio.com, and festivalofthesound.ca is where you can find out more about this summer music festival, now celebrating its 30th anniversary of fine music making here in Georgian Bay, Ontario, Canada. I'm Keith Horner. Goodbye. Thank you.
Perfect.
Great.